Good morning. So it's Monday, day one. I hope you're all ready and prepped. Again, any questions, please put them in the group or message me privately. Let me know straight away. If you have any questions, folks, please ask straight away. Don't be sitting there thinking, I wonder, should I? There's no silly questions. There's nothing wrong. You better find out. Remember, the more information you have, the more application you can have to the program. So don't ever be afraid to ask me anything, or make sure you double check, or is this right, or what am I doing? We have 5 days here to get the best results possible, whether it's from a weight loss point of view, a health aspect, but also to make the experience the best experience you can from a fasting point of view. So we enjoy it so much that we look forward to doing it next month again. That is part of the whole process. How can I make this effective, sustainable, but ultimately enjoyable? So next month I look forward to doing it again, so I can keep repeating it and repeating it and repeating it, so the system I have is sustainable long enough to keep going basically for the rest of my life. If anybody ever asks me what is the best diet to do, the best diet to do is the one that you can do for the rest of your life without any stress. Can you do 5 days once a month every month for the rest of your life? Probably you could. It's not the end of the world. Could you stick to a diet, like for example keto, for the rest of your life, where you're never going to eat carbs ever again? Probably not. Can you stick to a diet where you're not allowed any wine ever again and no chocolate or biscuits? Probably not, because you're not going to want to. So what is the best diet for you? The one that you can do long enough, or sustain it long enough to get the results that you want, and then keep it that way for the rest of your life. That's pretty much it. This is why I don't do meal plans, I do guidelines, because it's better working around the foods you like, the foods that you enjoy, the foods that you're used to buying, the foods that your family normally have. So that's the stuff that you're going to be able to do long term. Does that make sense? And that's how it works. Right. So today I want to talk about why intermittent fasting is such a good tool for burning fat. Now listen, realize what I said there, burning fat, not losing weight. I want you to try and change the terminology in your head from this point forward. It's not a weight loss program, it's a fat loss program. It's a completely different point of view. It's a completely different concept. Reason being, I don't want you to lose weight. Technically, I want you to lose body fat. In the fitness realm, we call that body recomposition. So what we're doing is we're adding muscle tissue. And again, for the ladies out there, please, because I know I've heard this a million times, when I say things like muscle tissue or muscle mass or building muscle or muscle preservation, you have in your head this muscular thing. It's not that at all. It's the muscles that you have in your body that keep your metabolism nice and fast. That's all it is. So when we're trying to build muscle, we're trying to build the muscle tissue that you have, the skeletal muscles that keep you moving, keep you living, keep you healthy, keep you functional, keep you metabolically healthy, not necessarily building big muscles. Right? That's not your goal. It might be my goal, it's not your goal, but you still want to build muscle, not lose muscle. Losing muscle means that you will age faster and die sooner. End of. So what we want to do is we want to think about fat loss, not weight loss. This is why we fast only for 5 days, so we don't lose any muscle tissue. That's why it's not a weight loss program, it's a fat loss program. I want you to lose as much fat as possible without losing as much weight as possible. For example, if you did this 5 days but you didn't eat any protein, you'd lose more weight, but about 30% of it would be muscle tissue, which you just regain again and more over the next 3 weeks. Where if we lose body fat, there's no rebound, because the body's happy enough to lose fat, it doesn't want to lose muscle. If it loses muscle, it will do everything in its power to put that back on again. This is where you get overfeeding, you get really hunger cravings, sugar cravings, because the body's fighting to put back the muscle tissue, and it will make you overeat to do it. This is why everybody, when they come off a strict diet, always put the weight back on them more. Not because they lost fat, but because they lost too much muscle tissue. Does that make sense? So I want you to change your opinion or your attitude or your point of view, the way you perceive it, as it is a fat loss program, not a weight loss program. This is why I don't like using the scales, because that's weight loss. I'd much rather use a pair of trousers, because that's fat loss. You're measuring your waistline with a trousers smaller. Does that make sense? And you can see how this is a different perception in the brain. So we feel better and more positive about achieving the goal. And you're not seeing fluctuations in the weight, which you don't even understand why you're happening, and it doesn't mean that you're not losing body fat. Does that make sense? Anyway, we're going off on a bit of a tangent here. So it's a fat loss program. So why is intermittent fasting so good for losing fat? Well, one, if you watched the video I did yesterday, where we talked about 3 levers that we have for restricting calories, because we're reducing the amount of food that we're eating, we're massively reducing calories without counting them or focusing on them. We're only getting 8 to 3 times a day or 1 time a day as opposed to 6 or 7 times a day. So therefore, by default, there's less calories coming in there for you, losing body fat. All right. So why else is it very good for losing body fat? Right. So let's get into the physiology of this. Whenever you eat food, specifically carbohydrates, because by most Western standards, about 80 to 90% of your diet is made up of carbohydrates. Now, when you eat carbohydrates, the body breaks that down into glucose. Glucose goes into the bloodstream. You have elevated blood glucose and elevated blood sugars, which means your blood sugar levels rises, which means, remember, carbohydrates is energy. It's broken down into glucose or sugar. It's the same thing, just different words. But it's all ultimately energy. It's energy in the bloodstream for the body to use. So the carbohydrates that we eat is energy, but we have to digest it from the carbohydrate source, which has got fiber and maybe some B complex vitamins and stuff like that. We break it down so we can shuttle that energy into the cell. So the body digests it, breaks it down into pure sugar or glucose. That then goes into the bloodstream. Then the pancreas realizes, oh, blood sugar levels are elevating. We call this hyperglycemia. Hyper being high, glycemia being glycogen or glucose levels are elevated. So the body goes, the pancreas goes, I'm going to have to bring blood sugar levels back down or this person's going to die. So what insulin does, insulin will go to the cells, tell the cells, can you open up for me please, so I can get some of this energy stored within the muscle cells or the liver cells or the cells where it's going to go to be utilized as energy. Whenever the cell sucks up that sugar, that means it's taking the sugar or the glucose from the blood, which means the amount of sugar in the blood can start to go back down to baseline. All right, so insulin comes to bring blood sugar back down to normal by putting energy into the cell. Now, as we age, as we stress our body, as our hormones changes, those cells become less responsive to the signal of insulin. So insulin comes, imagine a cell in a wee ball. Inside the ball is where we're going to store the energy for the cell to use the energy. Now, insulin comes and on top of the wee ball, there's like wee spikes, like a wee V thing like that, a wee thing like that, where we C on top of it, or wee Y or whatever. That's called a receptor site. Insulin comes, attaches onto the receptor site. It sends a signal inside the cell. A wee thing in here, wee mechanism called GLUT4. GLUT4 comes up to the cell wall, opens up the cell, and allows that blood sugar to come in. So you can see how this is working. That's called insulin sensitivity. So how sensitive is the receptor on the cell to the signal of insulin coming to tell the cell to open up, to let that energy come in via a mechanism called GLUT4. I know I'm getting very technical here, but it helps me just see the image in my head. Now, as we age, like I said, in bad diet, we become overweight, hormones change, that wee Y becomes resistant to the signal of insulin. So insulin comes and the wee Y doesn't hear it. Usually because there's a layer of fat around the top of it and it can't get the signal, or the cell is damaged because there's no estrogen around, because this here is made, well, it's used, it works well when estrogen is present, so it doesn't get the signal of insulin, right? So it doesn't let energy into the cell, which means there's all the energy stays within the cell, so you're basically going hyperglycemic. What will happen then is the body will say, right, okay, cortisol will start to elevate, stress hormone, and insulin is elevated because there's still a lot of blood sugar. They come together and they say, right, okay, see all that energy? Let's store it as fat, specifically around the belly, and specifically around the organs. We call this visceral fat. Visceral fat accumulates around the organs. This is where your stomach sort of distends. It gets very, very hard. You'll see this in men over 40 sometimes. They get normal sized limbs and arms, but a big pot belly. That's visceral fat. That is just death waiting to happen. Women in menopause get it as well. Midsection starts to extend. And that's because the cell is resistant to insulin, which is not letting glucose or sugar in. That means it all gets shuttled into fat accumulated around the waistline. So, why is fasting so good? When we eat food, like I said, we're getting this insulin spike all the time because the blood sugar levels are elevated. And again, like I described yesterday, if you're someone who wakes up and breakfast is the most important meal of the day, you have carbohydrates at 8 o'clock in the morning, and then you have a lunch break or tea break at 10 o'clock, you have a chocolate biscuit, maybe even if it's a piece of fruit, doesn't matter, it could be a cereal bar, and then lunchtime you get a sandwich, maybe it still might be healthy, but still carbohydrates, And at 3 o'clock, you've another cup of tea and a wee biscuit because everybody in the office is doing that. And at dinner time, then you've got dinner, your spuds, your pasta, your rice. And at night, then you've another wee cup of tea and a wee biscuit. That's carbs, 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 sugar, 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 sugar. It's the end of the bloodstream that the body cannot utilise because the wee cell is what we just talked about, insulin resistant. All this is getting shut on the body fat, specifically fat accumulation around the organs, non-alcoholic fatty liver, all that kind of stuff accumulating around the heart, intestine, everything, all that gunk in around there. Right, so when we fast, we're not bringing in any food, right? So therefore, insulin doesn't get to rise because the blood sugar's not elevated. There's two things that happen here. One, blood sugar levels are low to start with, that was just baseline. But we're moving and we're doing stuff and we're working and hopefully we're exercising, specifically lifting weights. So we really deplete the energy that's in the blood. Now the blood sugar levels start to drop down to low, which is called hypoglycemia. You're going hypo. The body goes, oh shit, there's no energy in the blood. We're running out of energy here. What are we going to do? Again, it's the job of the pancreas to regulate blood sugar. Remember, if blood sugar went too high, pancreas releases insulin. They store all that energy away to bring blood sugars back down to normal. If blood sugar levels drop too low, the pancreas goes, oh shit, blood sugar levels are too low. It sends a signal to the liver with a thing called glucagon. It says to the liver, can you release some body fat for me, break that down into blood glucose to bring the blood glucose levels back up again, because my person's about to die here from going hypoglycemia. So the job of the pancreas is very important. It's basically keep you alive, to stop you going hyperglycemia and dying, or to stop you from going hypoglycemia and dying. It's designed to keep your blood sugar nice and level. So the pancreas is following the liver, and the liver is releasing fat for the body then to go, okay, I now have some energy in the system. Now when that process happens, one, we're breaking down a lot of body fat, because the pancreas can only either release insulin or glucagon. It can't do both. Remember, insulin is an energy storing hormone. The energy is in the blood. Insulin comes to store that energy into the muscle cells, the liver, or as fat. If there's no energy coming in, the pancreas will release glucagon to break down stored energy to release back into the system. So insulin is an energy storage hormone. Glucagon is an energy releasing hormone. Both designed to regulate blood sugars from hyper to hypo to just baseline. Does that make sense? I'm trying to simplify this as much as possible, but it's very, very technical. Right, so one, when we're fasting, we're releasing more fat for fuel. We're releasing that fat to be utilized as fuel via glucagon. All right. What this then does, this sends the cell to become more sensitive to insulin. So what happens is the cell realizes, oh shit, there's really not any energy about here, and my person's moving, hopefully doing resistance training. Because when you're doing resistance training, you're really depleting the cell energy from inside. Remember talking about that wee GLUT4 thing? Well, GLUT4 normally waits for the signal of insulin, like ringing a doorbell. Oh, there's the doorbell, I'm going to go up and open up and let some energy in. But remember, the wee receptor's not working, so GLUT4, he doesn't hear any doorbell. He's sitting going, Jesus, we haven't heard that doorbell in a while. He doesn't realise it's broke. But whenever we start to deplete too much energy from within the cell, because we're resistance training and we're exercising, GLUT4 has a wee look around and goes, holy shit here, we're going to freaking die if I don't get some energy. So he takes it upon himself to go up and open the door to look for energy. When he keeps doing this and the door keeps opening, this brings back sensitivity to the wee receptor site. So the next time insulin does come along, he can grab that insulin and say, right, do your job, because this wee boy in here, he's getting very active here and he's looking for loads of energy. I'll start bringing back, so when we do eat carbohydrates, it's utilized more efficiently. And this is called metabolic health. This is your metabolism. Remember, your metabolism is basically the rate in which every cell in your body requires and uses energy. Sometimes they don't match. It wants energy, but it can't get it. Or if it down-regulates energy through, again, you're lazy, you're not moving, you're not doing resistance training, you're not doing a good diet, the body's energy requirements go down. And then you're eating too much energy. So then there's a surplus. So do you see how it works? Sometimes the body wants energy, but it's not getting it. Or you're getting energy, but it's not using it. That's metabolic irregulation. So we want to regulate the metabolism. And that's metabolic health. That means that everything's working properly. Does that make sense? And this is the way that intermittent fasting really helps you to burn more fat long term. fat loss, not weight loss. Hopefully with all this process that's going on, you eat enough protein, you're doing resistance training, you're preserving or hopefully building muscle tissue, while at the same time we're burning loads of fat because we're releasing lots of food or lots of energy through glucagon because there's no food coming in. We're burning loads of energy, so GLUT4 gets assigned to really a chance to really activate and bring back all the signals of the cells, they be insulin sensitive. So when insulin does come along, all those cells can function properly, get good cellular function. Does that make sense? I know it's very technical, but I want you to get your head through it. So whenever you do these longer fasts and you think you get this, oh, I'm getting hungry, think about the process. The longer I do this, the more body fat I'm breaking down to utilize as energy, and also the better my metabolic health is going to be because my cells are going to become more sensitive to insulin. So when I do eat things like carbohydrates, my body can utilize that energy more efficiently, and there's less chance of this stored as visceral fat accumulating in the organs and causing heart disease, heart attack, and death. Have a good day.